Good evening, viewers. Another episode of Guest with Nazir. I hope you have enjoyed your weekend. Please tell our viewers about your early days and your education.
So I was born in Sheffield and then lived in Thorpe Hesley until I was about 10. Then my family and I moved out to Dodworth in Barnsley, where we lived for another 4 years or so. And then we moved to somewhere kind of between Scunthorpe and Doncaster, a place called Eland.
And what's about your schooling?
Well, again, due to the moving about, it's been a bit not all at one school. I went to the majority of my secondary school education was at Penistone Grammar School, and then completed my GCSEs at North Axholme School, and then at my A levels at John Leggett College in Scunthorpe.
And at what stage you decided that you are going to move to legal profession?
I was probably about 12 or 13. I decided around then that I either wanted to be an orthopaedic surgeon or a lawyer. But I quickly realised in my woodwork and metalwork classes that I wasn't going to be any good as an orthopaedic surgeon. So rather than be something that I didn't necessarily want to be, I thought I'd be a lawyer instead.
So these two total different professions. And so what was the reason you picked up law then?
I suppose like most young people, you get interested in something because you see the TV examples of it. And then when you get in the profession, you find out that it's nothing like that at all. But it was certainly that intrigued me. And then throughout my schooling, towards my A-levels, and then while I was at university, I did work experience at local solicitors and with barristers' chambers. And that just reaffirmed that that's what I wanted to do.
And then you moved to university. So which university was your?
The University of Newcastle upon Tyne.
So you completed what degree from?
An LLB degree.
And have you got any special help from any friends or any solicitors when you were doing law degree, or
No,
you find it difficult?
No, not at all. I was self-sufficient, other than my friends on the course when we all worked together on bits and bobs and helped each other out. But no, I didn't have any experience or assistance from anybody within the profession at the time, no.
Because everybody has some subjects difficult in life. Some people struggle in maths, sometimes in jurisprudence, some people struggle in the criminal law or any other branch of law.
I didn't particularly enjoy land law, if I'm honest. I thought that was exceptionally boring, and it's not something I've ever been interested in practicing in. But it was one subject out of the core 8 or 9 that we did, and we were over it in first year, and after that point it was everything else was equity was a bit more interesting purely because of Lord Denning's whimsical judgments, but other than that, no, I enjoyed it all.
And what's about your LPC?
I did my LPC at the University of Sheffield, and strangely my elective modules were focused mainly on what would be now legal aid work. However, when I started my training contract, the first seat I was placed in was litigation, and that was it. I didn't want to do anything else.
So now if we look at the legal aid and the legal justice system in this country, a lot of legal cuts have been taken. For example, the court fee has been increased and legal cuts have always been there. So access to justice, how difficult it is for a common citizen?
It's more difficult than it was 10 years ago, that's for certain. With legal aid being reduced in family law and particularly in civil law, with it being no longer applicable, it's exceptionally difficult for some people to fund actions that they can rightly or ought to have funded. Indeed, I've seen somebody this week who ordinarily you would have offered a legal aid certificate to. It just isn't available anymore, so that prevents people from doing that. But the knock-on effect of it is that you end up with a lot of litigants in person in the court, which means that the court's time gets bogged down in dealing with them because they don't necessarily understand the practice. And that's not a criticism of litigants in person, because of course they're not supposed to understand it. But successive governments have placed them in the position where they didn't really ought to, dug themselves a hole, and now in the Lord Chief Justice this week suggested that they had to do something about it.
But the senior judges in this country have criticized the government's decision or the effects of these decisions that access to justice is very difficult. As a lawyer, how you see this?
I agree with them. It is very difficult in terms of getting access to justice for the ordinary citizen, unless you've got money. But it's always been thus. indeed, the Royal Courts of Justice, they built a special building purely for dealing with Russian oligarch cases. That's not access to justice in my book.
But how we will balance this debate that on one hand it is a responsibility of the state that they will give access to justice to a common citizen, but on the other hand this is like a discrimination that rich can buy the justice and the poor are the people who are struggling with the money, they can't have access to it.
No, that's correct, but I think to a degree, lesser degree, it always has been that way. It's just recent times, the gap between those who can afford to do something about it and those who can't has only increased, which does lead to problems for wealthy litigants attempting to bleed their poorer opposites dry. So not necessarily because they're in the right, but because they can afford to see the matter out.
For sake of argument, if somebody has to take action against a big company and somebody is a poor man or a poor citizen, they want to take action A against B. So A has power to engage counsel, engage to solicitor or a big company, but on the other hand, the citizen or the poor citizen, they don't have access.
Well, they do. There's always private funding. There are a number of insurers who are offering finance available now, but when you're dealing with civil and commercial litigation, the risk of having costs awarded against you, as well as having to pay for a finance agreement that you might have, sometimes it's just not worth it for somebody. And bigger companies can use their financial muscle to effectively bully people out of doing claims or attempting to foist them off because they know that if they sit tight long enough, then the other person will run out of resources and the issue will just go away.
So what is your main role now and what do you do at the moment?
I'm a litigator with Wasco Brown in Sheffield, and my role is to resolve the modern terminology is resolving disputes or dispute resolution. So it's like the old Ron Seal advert. It does what it says on the tin, in that if somebody has a problem with another person contractually or otherwise, that it doesn't fall within a civil or a family matter. It tends to be me and the team that I work with that would deal with it.
So how effective is the alternative route? Because a lot of people at the moment don't want to go to litigation side or going into disputive side. They want to go to this route. So how successful this route is?
It depends what you define success as. Quite often, the skill as a solicitor is to determine what the client actually wants from this. It's not often money, it's often something else. And once you've found out what that is, the skill is then trying to achieve it for them, however you can achieve it. Sometimes being able to be a bit creative in negotiation style and in your negotiation tactics. But it is something that you have to look beyond the law to do, because it's all well and good going to court and arguing the points and costing thousands of pounds worth to your client, but ultimately, if you can resolve what they really want quickly and early, that's the best course of action.
So at the moment, a lot of landlord and tenant disputes are going. Do you deal with these type of disputes?
I do.
So when we look at the residential tenancies and then we'll see another hand, the commercial tenancies, both have a totally different balance of power in these two. Mm-hmm. One have a total on the landlord side and one has totally some people say, on the tenant side. Mm-hmm. So what is your view about this?
I think the law does try to balance them, although I can understand the frustrations from all parties in their perceived lack of injustice or perceived injustice involved in it. But I think eventually it evens itself out into an even position.
And now we go back to the subject of the court fees. So how it has affected litigation, because the government has increased the court fees, and how it has, affect the claims, and especially the people who are struggling to recover money from their people who owe them some money. So how it has affected this?
Well, I don't know whether it's necessarily affected the claimants that I see, because I try and avoid court if possible, because it's an expensive and unpredictable job. That said, it is more difficult now for people to try and bring claims, particularly in an employment tribunal where there's now a fee to be paid, and there wasn't one up until a few years ago, which saw a lot of employment claimant work just drop off the cliff, and people being reluctant to bring claims because if you just lost your job, how on earth are you meant to pay the claim fee? And to an extent, it does put people off in higher value litigation when they're having to pay a percentage of their claim as the court fee. Even though sometimes if you have a really expensive claim, it might not necessarily be complex or detailed enough to warrant that higher fee, but you have to work with the rules of the game.
But if, I will say, if you have been given an opportunity to change some rules in litigation or in the legal justice system, what two changings you will like to bring into our legal justice system in this country?
I would get rid of the need for any fees in employment tribunals. Now, I know that's not going to be popular with employers, but I don't think that's necessarily access to justice for somebody in an employment context. I think I would also try and bring in some form of assistance for litigants in person, or more assistance than they get, because that would certainly help speed things up through the courts and create less of a backlog. But essentially, the courts just need more staff. You've seen their budgets being cut, not enough staff working in the court centres, which just delays things and drags things out even further. So that's three.
Now we move forward to a very, I will say, flexible subject about your personal interest in cricket. Mm-hmm. So do you bowl, do you bat, or what is your favourite side of the game?
I would say I was a pretty poor to average middle order batsman playing for a village cricket team in North Lincolnshire.
And still you have interest in the game? Or?
Yeah, still play for Luddington Cricket Club in the North Lindsey League, which is the next couple of villages up from where I live in North Lincolnshire. Play every other Sunday and combine that with my triathlon training and coaching that I do.
So what do you hope from our present English side in the upcoming T20 World Cup? Considering that they are performing well.
Well, they are performing well at the moment. As always, it comes down to who they pick. If they pick the T20 specialists, then they'll have a reasonable chance of doing well. But the England cricket team will always be held back while ever the ECB forbids players from playing in Test cricket and competing in the international competitions, T20 competitions, such as the Big Bash that reaches its climax this weekend, and the IPL as well. That's really where the innovations happen. But unfortunately, the vast majority of players in England and Wales don't get to go and play there.
Kevin Peterson is performing very well in the recent private leagues, which is, of course, they're not at the country level, but they are very high standard games. Uh-huh. So what do you think? He should be back in T20 side?
Yes, I do. I think he's probably England's most destructive batsman, and on current form is the best player. No matter what sport it is, you always pick your best players if you want to win. I just find it that simple.
Now we move forward again towards law, because we have few minutes left, and it's good that we have your presence. So what is the difference between civil litigation and commercial litigation? Because this terminology has been used number of time and number of years. So what is the difference between these two?
Civil litigation involves disputes between the person. So if me as a private citizen and I had a dispute with you, Mohammed, as a private citizen, then that would be civil litigation. If you were Mohammed Nazir Limited and I was Oliver Saxon Limited, then that would be commercial litigation, because it's a dispute between businesses. The crossover comes where it's an individual against a business, and that's a mixture of both sometimes, depending on the contract involved.
As a trainee solicitor, have you had any interesting incident in your life which you want to share with us?
I'm trying to think. They put me on the spot there. You always do as a trainee, you do end up doing weird and wonderful things. And often you think, what on earth am I doing this for? But you do it because you're instructed to do so. I've been out and brought... some things include going out and getting the senior partner's mum's lunch from the supermarket, through to having to serve somebody in the middle of the night dressed up as a railwayman because you needed to get papers served. All sorts of things, really. But there's nothing in particular that stands out other than the odd couple of cases that I dealt with that I'll probably remember for the rest of my career, mainly for the people involved, the clients involved anyway.
So what's about the students at the moment? Do you want to give them some tips, because a lot of youngsters are watching this show, and what are your tips for the trainee solicitors or upcoming law graduates? So what they should do, what kind of research, library use, research methods, anything you want to recommend for them?
Well, they should treat the studies as a 9-to-5 job, because the sooner you get into that habit, the better. Also, you'll do better if you do that, because you spend more time studying than playing on the PlayStation. But you should also seek to have outside interests so that you're a rounded individual and have things that you can relate to your clients with and talk to them about, and develop some sort of commercial awareness as well, how business operates, what a business might do. And if you have a part-time job, for example, you'll soon get a feel for how a commercial outfit operates, which will stand you in good stead as you progress throughout your legal career.
And any message for our viewers who are watching your show today?
Don't be concerned that access to justice is a major problem. It's an issue, but there are always ways in which, if you have a genuine dispute, that solicitors involved can and will try and get round and deal with it for you.
Thank you very much, and it was interesting to have you in my show, and I'm sure our viewers have also enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you very much for having me. I've liked to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Viewers, I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. If you want to join us as a guest, please do contact us. My email is shown on your screens. And this is your own show, Guest with Nazir. Keep watching Sheffield Live TV.